The Galactic Council had ruled for 12,000 years. 7 ancient races sat on the council and controlled everything in the known galaxy. They were older than most stars, wiser than any newly discovered species, and more powerful than entire solar systems combined. The council believed they knew how the universe worked. When they found a new species, they watched from far away. They studied how these creatures lived, how they thought, and how they fought. Then, when the time was right, the council would arrive with a simple offer. "Join us," they would say. "Follow our rules, accept our leadership, and we will give you the stars." Every species said yes. Every species except one. 300 years ago, the council discovered Earth. Humans were still young, still learning, still fighting among themselves. The council watched and waited. They saw humans split atoms and reach for their moon. They saw wars and peace, creation and destruction. The council labeled humanity as dangerous but predictable. When the council finally revealed themselves to Earth, they expected gratitude. They expected humans to bow down and accept their place in the galactic order. Instead, the human leaders listened quietly to the council's offer. They asked many questions. They discussed among themselves. Then they gave their answer. No, not a violent no. Not an angry no. Just a simple, firm no. Humans wanted to join the galaxy as equals, not as students or servants. They wanted full access to all technology, all knowledge, all rights. The council refused. They had never given such terms to anyone. The human diplomats thanked the council for their time. They smiled politely and returned to Earth. Then they closed their borders. Every ship that came near Earth's solar system vanished without a trace. No explosions, no wreckage, no distress calls. The ships were simply gone. The council debated what to do. Some wanted to invade Earth immediately. Others said to wait. Isolated species always failed, they argued. Without council technology, without council knowledge, humanity would collapse within a few generations. They would come begging to join on any terms. So the council waited. Years became decades. Decades became centuries. 250 years passed. Earth remained silent and sealed. The council grew comfortable with this arrangement. Humans were contained, forgotten, irrelevant. Then everything changed. Commander Velthrian stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Infinite Wisdom. He was Velthran, a species of pure thought wrapped in crystal. His kind could read minds and see possible futures. For 1,000 years, Velthrian had served the council, and never once had he felt fear. Until today, the sensors started screaming. Across 17 different sectors of space, detection systems registered something impossible. Thousands of faster-than-light signatures appeared at once, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. The scale was beyond anything in the council's records. Velthrian tried to focus his psychic senses. He reached out across space, searching for the minds behind these ships. He found nothing. The vessels were there on every scanner, but psychically they were invisible. Somehow, impossibly, they were shielded from mental detection. Before he could process this information, all the signatures vanished. Not jumped away, not destroyed, simply disappeared from every sensor at once as if they had never existed. But Velthrian knew they were still there, hiding, watching, waiting. Across the galaxy, council commanders stared at their displays in confusion and growing dread. The Ansible network, their system of instant communication, filled with panicked messages. What was happening? Where did the ships come from? Where did they go? Then the Ansible network went quiet. One by one, council stations stopped transmitting. Not because they were destroyed. They simply stopped talking as if afraid to make noise. For the first time in 12,000 years, the council did not know what was happening in their own territory. The silence lasted for 3 hours. Then a message arrived. It came on all frequencies at once, broadcast to every council vessel and station simultaneously. The voice was human, speaking perfect council standard language with no translator delay. The message was simple and direct. The Terran Armada has arrived. We are not here for conquest. We are here for conversation. You have 48 standard hours to respond. After that, we will assume you prefer a different kind of dialogue. The transmission ended. No demands, no threats, no explanations. Just that single statement hanging in the void. Velthrian looked at his crew. His officers, veterans of countless battles, looked back at him with uncertainty in their eyes. They had trained for war. They had prepared for invasion. But this calculated display of overwhelming force followed by patient waiting, This was something new. The commander tried again to reach out with his psychic abilities. He pushed his consciousness across space, searching desperately for any hint of human thoughts or intentions. Still nothing. The silence in the stars was complete. Then Velthrian realized something that made his crystalline form grow cold. The silence was not empty. The silence was full of hidden ships, hidden weapons, hidden intentions. The humans had not just arrived. They had surrounded the entire Council territory without being detected. They had infiltrated the galaxy while the Council slept in their arrogance. In that moment, Velthrian understood with perfect clarity. The Council had made a terrible mistake 250 years ago. They had assumed humanity would be weak and desperate after centuries of isolation. Instead, humanity had used that time to become something the galaxy had never seen. And now they were here, invisible and patient, waiting to see if the Council would choose wisdom or pride. The stars had fallen silent. The galaxy held its breath. And somewhere in that terrible quiet, humanity watched and waited for an answer. The emergency session of the Galactic Council began within 6 hours of the human transmission. All 7 elder races gathered on Axis Prime, their capital world. The Great Chamber had hosted thousands of meetings over millennia, but it had never felt this tense. The Dromath war leader Scareth spoke first, his scales rattling with rage. He demanded immediate military action. Send every available fleet to Earth. Show these upstart humans what real power means. Make an example of them that would echo through the galaxy for the next 10,000 years. The architects disagreed. Kristallos, their ancient leader, wanted to study this new human technology first. How did they hide from sensors? How did they block psychic detection? These questions needed answers before any military response. The Velthran representatives attempted their own psychic reconnaissance. Dozens of their strongest minds reached out toward Earth, trying to penetrate whatever shield protected human thoughts. They found nothing but a smooth, impenetrable wall. It was as if humanity had learned to hide their entire species from mental sight. The Sithari, who lived in vast underwater cities, spoke for peace. They argued that humanity deserved a chance to negotiate. Perhaps this show of force was simply their way of demanding respect. Give them what they want. Open diplomatic channels, avoid bloodshed. The Kithros, insectoid masters of calculation and probability, ran their numbers and found the results disturbing. According to every model, every simulation, every historical parallel, the Council should have overwhelming advantage, yet something in the data felt wrong. The Kithros advised extreme caution, while the Council argued their intelligence services worked frantically to understand what had happened during Earth's isolation. They recovered fragments of transmissions, analyzed debris from the vanished ships, and interviewed traders who had observed Earth's borders from safe distances. The picture that emerged terrified them. Humanity had taken the technology samples from first contact and reverse-engineered everything, but they had not stopped there. While Council technology had remained largely unchanged for thousands of years, refined but stagnant, human innovation had exploded in unexpected directions. They had developed quantum-fold drives that made Council faster than light systems look like ancient steam engines. They had created artificial intelligence so advanced that the Council had banned such research as too dangerous. Yet humans had integrated these AI safely into every aspect of their civilization. They had learned to extract unlimited energy from the quantum vacuum itself. More disturbing were the weapons. Humanity had weaponized fundamental physics in ways the Council had never imagined. They could manipulate gravity, create localized distortions in space-time, and cause matter itself to simply cease existing at the quantum level. But the most frightening discovery was this. Humans had studied Council psychology. They understood how each species thought, how each species made decisions, what each species feared. The Armada's arrival had been carefully calculated to produce maximum uncertainty and dread. It was psychological warfare on a galactic scale. As the Council continued their heated debate, a new message arrived. This time it included a request for a holographic conference. The Council had no choice but to accept. Ambassador Chen Zhao appeared before them. She was an elderly human woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She wore simple clothing and stood calmly, her hands folded in front of her. She looked like someone's grandmother, not a representative of an overwhelming military force. She smiled gently and began to speak. 250 years ago, you came to us offering subjugation dressed as partnership. You assumed we were primitives who would be grateful for scraps from your table. You were wrong about us then, and you are wrong about us now. Her voice remained calm and pleasant, but her words cut through the chamber like a blade. We did not build this armada to destroy you. We built it so that when we came to talk, you would actually listen. Consider this conversation a courtesy, one you did not extend to us. Architect Prime Crystallos attempted to respond. He spoke of the Council's ancient wisdom, their responsibility to guide younger species, their proven track record of maintaining galactic peace. His tone was condescending, as if explaining simple facts to a child. Ambassador Chen cut him off mid-sentence. Let me be clear about our position. We are not asking to join your council. We are informing you that Earth and every human colony we have established in the past 2 centuries is sovereign territory. We will trade with whom we choose, ally with whom we wish, and defend ourselves against any threat. Your compliance is not required. Your acceptance would be appreciated. War leader Scareth could not contain himself. He rose from his seat, his massive reptilian form towering over the hologram. His voice boomed through the chamber. What gives you the right to make such demands? You are one species among thousands. You have no authority here. Ambassador Chen's expression did not change. She looked at Scareth with those kind grandmother eyes and answered softly. War leader, at this moment, there are 47,000 Terran vessels within your borders. They are undetectable by your sensors, capable of striking any target in the galaxy within hours, and equipped with weapons you cannot defend against. That is not a threat. It is a fact. She paused, letting that sink in. But here is the real answer to your question. We earned the right the same way every species in this galaxy earned their place. Through our own efforts, our own ingenuity, our own will. The only difference is that we refuse to use that strength to dominate others the way you have. The hologram flickered and ended. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Some species called for war. Others demanded negotiation. The ancient alliance that had held for 12,000 years began to crack. Commander Veltharion had watched the entire exchange in silence. Unlike his colleagues, he had been observing Ambassador Chen with his psychic senses throughout the conversation. He had not tried to read her mind, that was impossible. But he had watched her emotional resonance, the subtle patterns that even the best shields could not completely hide. What he sensed surprised him. There was strength, yes. Determination, certainly. But beneath it all, he detected something unexpected. Weariness, hope, fear. Not fear of the Council, but fear of what might come next. Ambassador Chen did not want war. None of the humans wanted war. They simply wanted respect. Veltharion made a decision in that moment. While the rest of the Council argued and postured, he would seek the truth. He would go to human territory himself and try to understand these strange, dangerous, hopeful creatures. Because for the first time in his 1,000 years of service, the commander realized something profound. The Council might be ancient and powerful, but humanity had something they had lost long ago. Humanity still remembered how to change, how to grow, how to dream of something better. And that might be the most dangerous thing of all. The Kthras decided to test humanity. They were careful, secretive creatures who valued information above all else. If the humans were as powerful as they claimed, then the Kthras wanted proof. If the humans were bluffing, then the Kthras wanted to expose that weakness before the Council made any deals. They hired the Ravagers. These pirates had terrorized the outer edges of Council space for centuries, raiding unprotected colonies and taking whatever they wanted. The Ravagers were brutal but effective. 300 ships, experienced crews, no mercy. The target was New Hebrides, a remote human colony world. Intelligence suggested it was a farming settlement with only 2 million people. Minimal defenses, easy prey. The Ravagers accepted the contract eagerly. They attacked at dawn. 300 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Their weapons charged. Their sensors swept the surface. The colony below looked exactly as expected. Farms, small towns, a few orbital satellites. No military installations visible. No defense platforms. No fleet. The Ravager commander, a massive Gorvian named Thask, grinned with all 4 jaws. This would be over in an hour. Easy money. The bombardment began. Kinetic rounds rained down on population centers. Landing craft launched toward the surface to take slaves and plunder resources. Everything proceeded exactly as planned, for exactly 17 minutes. Then every Ravager ship simultaneously lost power. Weapons went offline. Engines died. Life support flickered. 300 warships became 300 floating metal coffins dead in space. The crews panicked, desperately trying to restart systems that refused to respond. On the surface, structures began to transform. What had looked like grain silos unfolded into defense platforms. Water towers reconfigured into missile batteries. The peaceful farmers below shed their disguises. Every colonist was trained militia. Every piece of farm equipment converted into military hardware within seconds. But the real surprise came from above. A single ship uncloaked directly above the disabled Ravager fleet. The Terran destroyer Retribution was enormous, dwarfing even the largest pirate dreadnought. Its hull was smooth and dark, covered in technology the Ravagers had never seen. Captain Marcus Webb broadcast on all frequencies. His voice was calm, almost bored. "Attention, Ravager fleet. You have attacked sovereign Terran territory and harmed Terran citizens. Under Terran law, you have 3 options. Immediate surrender, immediate departure, or immediate deletion. You have 60 seconds to choose." Thask stared at the human ship in disbelief. 1 vessel against 300? Even with their power disabled, the Ravagers outnumbered this arrogant human by impossible odds. Once they restored power, they would tear that ship apart. Thask opened a channel and laughed. "Your arrogance will be your death, human. 1 ship cannot defeat 300. When we restore our systems, we will show you what real power means." Captain Webb's response was immediate. The Retribution fired once. A single beam of pure energy lanced out from the destroyer. It did not explode against the Ravager ships. It did not burn through their hulls. Instead, it passed through them like they were made of smoke. 50 Ravager vessels simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed. Not vaporized. Erased. Gone at the quantum level. As if they had never been there at all. The remaining pirates stared in horror at the empty space where their companions had been seconds before. 30 seconds. Captain Webb said quietly. The Ravagers surrendered. All of them, immediately. Every ship broadcasting capitulation, on every frequency they could access. What happened next surprised the galaxy even more than the battle itself. The humans did not execute their prisoners. They did not torture them for information. They did not sell them into slavery or leave them to die in space. Instead, they boarded each disabled vessel, provided medical care for the wounded, and transferred the surviving pirates to secure holding facilities. The prisoners were treated according to something humans called the rules of war. They were given food, water, medical attention. They were allowed to send messages to their families. They were processed through a legal system that seemed designed to be fair rather than cruel. The Ravagers, who had spent their entire lives taking what they wanted through violence, did not know how to process this treatment. Some thought it was a trick. Others began to question everything they had believed about power and strength. The Kethros observers, watching from hidden surveillance systems, reported back to the Council with their findings. Every finding was disturbing in its own way. First, the human colony had never been defenseless. Every human world was a fortress with weapons and soldiers hidden in plain sight. Second, civilian and military in human society were almost impossible to distinguish. Every farmer could fight. Every teacher could operate advanced weapons. Every shopkeeper was part of an intricate defense network. Third, human weapons technology was even more advanced than feared. The quantum deletion beam was something entirely new, something that made conventional shields and armor completely useless. But the fourth finding was the most disturbing. The humans had deliberately held back. Captain Webb could have destroyed the entire Ravager fleet in an instant, but chose to give them a chance to retreat. This was not weakness. This was terrifying restraint from a position of absolute power. The Council began to fracture. The War Party, led by the Dromath, demanded immediate preemptive strikes before humanity grew even stronger. The Peace Party, led by the Seteri, wanted immediate negotiations and recognition of human sovereignty. The observers wanted more time to study and understand. Commander Velthrian took a personal ship to New Hebrides. He requested to meet with the humans face to face. Captain Webb agreed. They met in a small office on the colony. Felthrian was a being of pure thought wrapped in crystal. Webb was a weathered man in his 50s with gray hair and tired eyes. They sat across from each other in simple chairs, two beings from completely different worlds trying to understand one another. "Why?" Felthrian asked. "Why show such restraint after we tried to test you?" Webb leaned back in his chair and was quiet for a moment before answering. "Because we remember what it is like to be afraid of the unknown. Because we have fought enough wars among ourselves to know that violence should always be the last option, not the first. Because we are trying to be better than we were." He paused and looked directly at the crystalline being across from him. "Your council judges species by how dangerous they are. We judge ourselves by how we treat those weaker than us. Those pirates were no threat to us, so we gave them a chance. Your council sent them to die as a test. That says more about you than it does about them." Felthrian was silent for a long moment, processing this answer. Finally, he asked the question that had brought him across the galaxy. "What do you want from us?" "Recognition. Partnership. A galaxy where strength does not mean domination. Is that really so much to ask?" Felthrian returned to council space with a message for his people. Humanity was indeed dangerous, but not in the way the council feared. They were dangerous to the entire philosophy of rule through superior force. They were dangerous because they offered an alternative, a vision of a galaxy built on respect rather than submission, and that idea, more than any weapon, had the power to change everything. The Dromath War Council could not accept what was happening. For 12,000 years, the Council had maintained order through superior military force. Now a single species threatened to tear down that entire system. The Dromath saw only one solution: overwhelming violence applied immediately before humanity grew even stronger. Without waiting for full council approval, war leader Scareth issued an ultimatum. The Terran Armada would withdraw from all claimed territories outside the Sol system. Humanity would submit to council oversight. They would surrender their advanced weapons technology. Failure to comply within 10 standard days would result in enforcement action. It was a catastrophic miscalculation. The moderate voices in the council scrambled to distance themselves from the ultimatum, but the damage was done. Humanity interpreted it exactly as intended, a declaration of war. Ambassador Chen's response was broadcast across the entire galaxy. Her message was only 2 words long. So be it. Both sides mobilized for war, but the conflict was uneven from the beginning. The Council mustered the largest fleet in galactic history. Ships arrived from every corner of their territory. 3.7 million warships assembled at Rally Point Sigma, a massive staging area in neutral space. It was an awesome display of power that stretched across an entire solar system. Fleets that had ended countless rebellions without firing a shot. Humanity's response was invisible. No fleet movements were detected. No military buildup, no panic, just silence. Scareth led the assembled council forces toward the nearest human colony, expecting either surrender or desperate defense. What they found was an empty world. Every human civilian was gone, evacuated by ships the council never detected. The colony sat empty and silent, waiting. The council fleet entered the system cautiously. Their sensors swept every planet, every moon, every asteroid. Nothing. Then they realized their mistake. They were surrounded, not by ships at first, by a quantum minefield that destabilized their faster-than-light drives. The council fleet was trapped, unable to retreat. Then the Terran ships appeared. They uncloaked all at once, materializing from nothing in perfect formation around the council forces. Not 40,000 ships. 400,000. The armada that had arrived in council space weeks ago was only 10% of humanity's actual fleet. The rest had been seeded throughout the galaxy over 2 centuries of secret expansion. Admiral Elena Rodriguez commanded the Terran forces from her flagship, the Indomitable Will. She broadcast a simple message to the trapped council fleet: "Leave now and we will let you. Stay and we will do what we must." Scareth refused to believe humanity would actually fight. This had to be a bluff. The council still had numbers on their side. He ordered the attack. The Battle of Broken Stars lasted 4 hours. It was not a fair fight. Terran weapons proved overwhelmingly superior. Quantum disruptors caused council ships to fall apart at the molecular level. Causality mines created localized time distortions that aged enemy vessels centuries and seconds. Swarm missiles adapted mid-flight to counter every defensive measure. Point singularity generators created miniature black holes that pulled entire formations into oblivion. But the real difference was not technology. It was thinking the Council fought like they had for millennia. Massive formations, overwhelming firepower, tactics refined over centuries but ultimately predictable. Humanity fought like humans, unpredictable, adaptive, creative. Every engagement was different. Every tactic was novel. The AI-assisted command networks allowed the Terran fleet to coordinate with precision that made it function as a single living organism. Commander Velthrian, commanding a Council division, watched the battle unfold with his psychic abilities. He could see moments into the future, glimpses of what would happen next. Every path he observed led to disaster. The Council was not just losing. They were being systematically dismantled. He made a choice. Breaking formation, Velthrian's ships broadcast surrender and requested asylum. It was unprecedented. A Council commander defecting in the middle of battle, but seeing his ships allowed to withdraw safely, dozens of other Council vessels followed. Then hundreds. The Council line collapsed. Scareth, refusing to accept defeat, led a suicide charge into the Terran formation. Admiral Rodriguez gave clear orders to her fleet. Disable, don't destroy. The Terran ships crippled the Dromath dreadnought but allowed escape pods to launch. Scareth chose death over capture. He destroyed his own command ship rather than face the humiliation of surrender. The battle ended. The casualty reports were staggering. Council losses: 2.1 million vessels destroyed or disabled. 8.3 trillion lives lost. Terran losses: 4,200 ships. 6.3 million casualties. The galaxy reeled in shock. The Council, invincible for 12,000 years, had been decisively defeated. But what shocked everyone more was what happened next. Admiral Rodriguez broadcast from the battlefield to all remaining Council forces. The war is over. We will not pursue. We will not occupy your worlds. We will not demand tribute or reparations. Return to your territories. Care for your wounded. Mourn your dead. She paused, then continued. We wanted peace. You brought war. Now you know the cost. If you come at us again, we will not show restraint. The surviving Council ships, nearly half the original fleet, were allowed to withdraw without interference. Humanity even transmitted medical protocols to help treat the wounded. They shared technology to repair damaged vessels. They allowed the Council to retreat with dignity, rather than pursuing them into oblivion. Every species in the galaxy understood what this meant. If the positions were reversed, if the Council had achieved such a decisive victory, they would occupy human space. They would dismantle Earth's government. They would subject humanity to centuries of re-education and control. Instead, the Terran fleet simply returned home. They left only patrol forces to secure human territory. No invasion, no occupation, no revenge. The galaxy held its breath again, but this time for a different reason. Everyone waited to see what humanity would do with their victory. The Council had ruled through fear and superior force for 12 millennia. Now that system had been shattered by a species that seemed to have no interest in taking the Council's place. The question on everyone's mind was simple and profound. If humanity did not want to conquer, if they did not want to rule, if they had achieved ultimate victory but chose not to use it, then what kind of galaxy would emerge from the ashes of the old order? For the first time in recorded history, the future was genuinely uncertain, and that uncertainty felt less like fear and more like hope. The Galactic Council collapsed within weeks of the Battle of Broken Stars. The ancient alliance that had held for 12,000 years fell apart like a structure with its foundation removed. The Dromath withdrew into isolationism, humiliated and broken. Their entire philosophy had been built on military supremacy, and humanity had shattered that belief in 4 hours. The architects in Cathros demanded investigations into how the war started and who was responsible. The Sithari and Sylvans immediately opened diplomatic channels with humanity. The Luminari remained neutral observers as always. The Velthrin split between those who followed Velthrian toward reform and those who clung to the old ways. On Axis Prime, the capital world descended into chaos. Member species that had been forced into the Council system for millennia began asking dangerous questions. If the Council could not protect them from a single species, what right did the Council have to rule? If humanity could defeat them so easily, what else had the Council been wrong about? Commander Velthrian, now branded a traitor by hardliners but celebrated as a reformer by progressives, led a delegation to Earth. It would be the first time Council representatives had set foot on humanity's homeworld since the original contact 300 years ago. What they found astonished them. Earth was not a fortress world covered in weapons and military installations. Instead, they saw a garden, vast cities integrated seamlessly with nature, orbital habitats that teemed with diverse life. A species that had achieved technological supremacy without destroying their environment. The human aesthetic was one of harmony, not domination. Their architecture flowed with natural landscapes rather than bulldozing through them. Their technology enhanced life rather than replacing it. Even their most powerful weapons were designed with restraint in mind, capable of overwhelming force, but built to minimize collateral damage. Velthrian met with Ambassador Chen in Geneva, a city that perfectly embodied human values. Ancient and modern existed side by side, natural beauty enhanced rather than destroyed by progress. The Velthrian commander asked the question that haunted every species in the galaxy. What do you want? You could rule the entire galaxy. Why do you not take what you have won? Ambassador Chen smiled that kind grandmother smile and answered simply, because we remember what it is like to be on the other side of conquest. Earth has enough scars from our own wars to know that empires built on subjugation always fall. We do not want subjects. We want neighbors. She gestured out the window at the city below, where beings from a dozen different species walked freely among humans. We spent centuries fighting among ourselves over resources, religion, territory, ideology. We nearly destroyed our own world multiple times. We learned the hard way that diversity is strength, that cooperation beats domination, that respecting others makes everyone stronger. Humanity presented a proposal for restructuring galactic governance. They called it the Galactic Commonwealth. The structure was radical and simple. First, abolish the Galactic Council in its current form. Second, establish a voluntary association where all species had equal voice regardless of their technology or military power. Third, free exchange of technology to uplift developing species rather than controlling their advancement. Fourth, mutual defense pacts based on consent, not coercion. Fifth, non-interference in the internal affairs of member species while maintaining cooperation on galactic-level issues. It was everything the Council was not. Democratic, transparent, egalitarian, based on cooperation rather than dominance. Not everyone accepted the new order. The Dromath refused to participate, viewing the Commonwealth as weakness. Pirate factions and slavers, emboldened by the Council's collapse, launched raids on vulnerable worlds. Various warlords tried to carve out their own territories in the chaos. Humanity's response established the precedent that would define the Commonwealth. The Terran Defense Fleet deployed not to conquer but to protect. When the Dromath tried to reassert control over former client species, Terran ships arrived to defend those species' sovereignty. When raiders attacked defenseless colonies, Terran forces drove them off and helped rebuild. Slowly, grudgingly, the galaxy began to understand. Humanity meant what they said. They were not the new overlords. They were the enforcers of a new principle. Every sapient species had the right to determine their own fate. The architects revealed a secret they had kept for millennia. They remembered humanity, or something like humanity. 12,000 years ago, the architects had encountered another species with remarkable similarities. Adaptive, creative, dangerous. That species, called the progenitors, had built an empire spanning multiple galaxies. Then the progenitors vanished. They left behind ruins and warnings about something they called the Silence, an existential threat that waited in the darkness between galaxies. The progenitors left a final message carved into the fabric of space-time itself. When the twice-born species emerges, they will be tested. If they conquer, all is lost. If they cooperate, there is hope. The architects believed humanity might be these twice-born. Whether literal descendants of the progenitors or their conceptual successors, humanity had passed the first test. They had achieved ultimate power and chosen not to use it for domination. But if the Silence was real, if it was coming, then the galaxy needed to be ready. 5 years after the Battle of Broken Stars, the galaxy had transformed. The Galactic Commonwealth had 73 member species, with more joining each year. Trade flourished across borders that had been closed for millennia. Scientific collaboration led to breakthroughs that benefited everyone. Former client species of the Council found their voices and their strength. Humanity became the galaxy's strange, stabilizing force. They were powerful enough that none dared challenge the new order, but restrained enough that none feared conquest. Terran ships patrolled the space lanes not as overlords but as peacekeepers, invited and welcomed by the species they protected. Ambassador Chen retired after helping establish the Commonwealth's foundation. Her replacement, a younger diplomat named Kenji Okonkwo, took up the responsibility. In his first speech to the Commonwealth Assembly, he acknowledged the challenges ahead. "We are not perfect. We will make mistakes, but we will face them together as equals, not as masters and subjects, but as fellow travelers in this cosmos. We have proven we can win a war. Now we must prove we can win a peace." On the borders of known space, long-range sensors detected something disturbing. Entire solar systems were going dark. Not destroyed by war or natural disaster, simply silenced, as if something was erasing them from existence. The architect's warnings about the silence might have been more than ancient myth. Admiral Rodriguez, now commanding the Commonwealth Defense Force, reviewed the data with growing concern. She called an emergency session of the Commonwealth Council and showed them what the sensors had found. She addressed the assembled representatives from dozens of species. "We have spent 12,000 years divided, suspicious of each other, competing instead of cooperating. That ends now. Whatever is out there, whatever the silence truly is, we will face it as one galaxy, not as scattered species fighting alone." The Commonwealth voted unanimously to launch a deep space exploration mission. They would investigate the silence and discover whether the progenitors' warnings were prophecy or paranoia. The vessel chosen for this mission was the Unity, humanity's newest ship launched from Earth's orbital shipyards. Unlike the warships of the Armada, the Unity was designed for exploration and cooperation. Its crew included representatives from 20 different species, working together as equals. As the Unity prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed, Beltharian stood on the bridge as the ship's chief science officer. Next to him stood Captain Sarah Chen, Ambassador Chen's granddaughter. Around them worked architects Cathari, Cathros, Sylvans, Luminari, and even a few reformed Dromath who had chosen cooperation over isolation. The Unity jumped, disappearing into the stars on a journey into the unknown. Back on Earth, in the Commonwealth headquarters, a memorial stood to honor those who had died in the Battle of Broken Stars. Both human and council casualties were remembered equally. The inscription was simple but profound. "They fought so we could talk. They died so we could live together. May their sacrifice remind us that the true measure of strength is not the power to destroy, but the wisdom to build." The Terran Armada had arrived, and the stars had fallen silent. The galaxy had held its breath, waiting to see if humanity would become new tyrants or something different. Now the galaxy could exhale. Humanity had proven that power without cruelty was possible, that victory without vengeance was achievable, that the strongest civilization could also be the kindest. They had shown the galaxy that there was another way, a better way. The future remained uncertain. The silence waited in the darkness, mysterious and potentially terrible. New challenges would arise. Conflicts would occur. Mistakes would be made. But for the first time in galactic history, species faced these challenges together rather than divided by fear and mistrust. The question was no longer who would rule. The question was who they would become together. And that question, full of possibility and hope, was far more interesting than any answer the old council had ever provided.